Welcome to Luke 21 Radio, a broadcast explaining biblical prophecy in the tradition of St. Augustine. And now, from Greenville, South Carolina, here's your host, Steve Wood.
Hello, this is Steve Wood, and welcome to Luke 21 as we study biblical prophecy together. We're getting near the end of our study in the book of Revelation, and today we launch into Revelation chapter 21. We're getting very, very close to the conclusion of the book of Revelation. And the first 5 verses of Revelation 21 talks about the new heavens and the new earth. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a great voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling of God is with men. He will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. And he who sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. Now, there's a big question that this very first verse of Revelation 21 brings up. He says, I see a new heaven and a new earth. Well, what exactly is the meaning of a new heaven and a new earth? We can use new in a couple of ways. We can say, I have a new car, meaning, rolled off the assembly line in Detroit, and I have a completely new vehicle, one that never existed before. That's new. And that's one way to view the new heavens and a new earth. Like, the first heavens and earth, the whole universe, is replaced by something entirely new, like a new car. Or it can mean something profoundly transformed and renewed. If you watch the Discovery Channel, I think there's a couple of shows on about car restorations. You bring in a rusty car, and 3 months later you come to pick it up and just pop your eyeballs and say, it's a new car. Well, it is a new car, but it's been renewed. Something that existed before was transformed. So either of these interpretations could work for Revelation 21. It's very difficult to tell. Now, St. Peter, in his second epistle, talks about this. He seems to lean on the side of something entirely new. In other words, the first is gone and something new is replaced. And this is what he says, 2 Peter chapter 3 and verse 12, talking about the same thing that we're reading about in Revelation 21. Waiting for and hastening the coming day of God, because of which the heavens will be kindled, that's set on fire, and dissolved, and the elements will melt with fire. But according to his promise, we wait for new heavens and a new earth in which righteousness dwells. That's from our first Pope, talking about the same thing. Now, I'd like to highlight one word in verse 12 when he says the heavens will be kindled and dissolved. And that word dissolved in Greek is luo, which simply means loose. Like if you imagine somebody tied up with several things of rope wrapped around them, and then it's untied. He's loosed. He's no longer bound. Well, I'm just tracking this because it's kind of a fascinating subject. In Colossians 1, it says about Jesus, for in him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. He is before all things, and listen, and in him all things hold together. They're bound. So 2 Peter 3 and verse 12 talks about being dissolved or loosed, but until then, Jesus is actively holding all things together. Now, I know just about absolutely nothing about nuclear explosions or fission and all that, but I asked Chat, I said, in very simple terms, please explain to me what happens in a nuclear explosion. And it said, okay, in simple terms, a nuclear explosion happens when the nucleus of certain atoms, usually uranium or plutonium, splits apart extremely quickly, and this is our context, releasing a huge amount of energy all at once. So that's how one could look at, and I think it's a valid interpretation, Revelation 21 and 2 Peter 3, and using Colossians 1:16 and 17 to kind of understand that first interpretation, that the first is just gone away. It's literally, this is the Big Bang, and something new is created. But there's another way to look at this, and that would be like the fire, the elements kindled and stuff, like an intense purification of the present world so that there can be an eternal dwelling of God's righteousness. And surprisingly, a significant portion of the early church writers commenting on Revelation and the idea of a new heavens and a new earth took this view of a profound transformation rather than a complete destruction and recreation. And in this broadcast, I'm presenting both. I can view this topic like a seesaw and kind of lean one way and lean the other, but I have great respect for the early writers. I have a great curiosity about the early writers. And by the way, I'm going to give you two of them, but somebody might be thinking, hey, where does Steve get all this stuff? Well, just so you know, there's a commentary series called the Ancient Christian Commentary on Scripture. It's kind of an expensive set, but they will have, like all the books of the New Testament, there's a separate volume on the book of Revelation. And in the book of Revelation, they have 33 different writers commenting on the book of Revelation from the early centuries of the church. And these are not complete commentaries from each of these 33 men, but what they are is they had something interesting to say about a particular topic, then they would have it in a commentary. And here's the first one, if I can pronounce his name, because you're probably not going to be able to spell it, Ecumenius, who was a 6th century author of the oldest Greek commentary on Revelation. And you might say, well, this is the first Greek commentary in the 6th century, and this is a whole topic in itself, but there's probably about a half dozen reasons why the Eastern Church was slow to really dig into the book of Revelation, some even to accept it. So it came. But here's what he says in the 6th century. In his second letter, Peter speaks as though heaven and earth and sea are destroyed and pass into non-existence, and that other things coming to being in their place. Rather, they mean that the present realities have cast off their corruption and become new, putting off their filth as though it were an old and dirty garment. For what is called, quote, new, unquote, which is not such as it was formerly, but as it is now become, the creation shall then be free of every corruption that it contracted through the transgression of humankind. And so it's taking that word new and it's profoundly renewed. And that's how he is interpreting 2 Peter, which in my understanding is the strongest argument for that first view I mentioned, rather than the profound renewal and transformation. Another 6th century writer, Andrew of Caesarea, and he has a commentary on the Apocalypse. When he comments on Revelation 21:1, he says, quote, this passage does not speak of the obliteration of creation, but of its renewal into something better, unquote. Okay? So I've given you both. This is what the Catechism of the Catholic Church says, and it's, really, what do I know about the new heavens and the new earth? What does anybody know? We are going to absolutely love it and enjoy it. It's going to be profoundly wonderful, and that's the next episode. But in any case, this is what section of the Catechism 1043 says, quote, "Sacred Scripture calls this serious renewal, which will transform humanity and the world, new heavens and a new earth," and gives the Scripture references as footnotes, Revelation 21 and 2 Peter 3:13. So it's a mysterious renewal. In other words, it's probably a little bit beyond our ability to grasp. I'm going to give you some pictures of it in our next episode. But I want to leave you with a question that we will dig into in our next episode, and particularly how the answer to this question can transform, say, if you're a youth leader, your youth group, your entire worldview. If you're a parent, homeschooling parent, Catholic catechist, or teacher, here's the question: where will we spend eternity? Okay, if you're a Christian with Christ for eternity, where will we spend it? And this question, the answer of which is actually quite simple, is misunderstood by literally tens of millions of Christians worldwide of all stripes, Catholic, Protestant, you name it. Okay, here's the answer. It's very simple. I've already read it to you, but now I'm going to give it a little emphasis. Revelation 21 and verse 2. "And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven." We don't go up to heaven in eternity. Heaven comes down. "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven." And Revelation 21:3. "And I heard a voice from the throne saying, Behold, the dwelling of God is with men. He will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be with them." Well, that's Jesus, the incarnate second person of the Trinity. God himself will be with him. And where is he? Revelation 21, everything is one direction. It's coming down from above to earth, to a new earth. And now I want to give you an important but completely overlooked sentence from the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And this is where a lot of our language goes haywire because we think of heaven just as up there. But should we? Here's what the Catechism says in section 1025. "To live in heaven is to," quote, "be with Christ," unquote. Well, at this point in time, if I would die instead of eating lunch after this broadcast, okay, and I'm going to put aside for a moment all the purgatory questions. I just don't want to complicate this. If I was in a state of perfect grace and, I was good to go, I would go up. But when the second coming occurs, heaven comes down. That's the whole point. It wasn't a grand escape, right? No, it's redeeming not only our bodies, but our universe and our world. And it will be as great as it was in the beginning and even more glorious. And that's what we want to talk about in our next episode. I'm Steve Wood, your host, and you've been listening to Biblical Prophecy with Luke 21.
Luke 21 is a radio outreach of Family Life Center International. To learn more about biblical prophecy, visit us online at luke21.com.